Welcome to Comfort Crime with Lindsay Sanchez, a cozy mystery podcast where no actual crimes have been committed. Today, we'll continue Death at Dogwood Lake, a novella about Georgia Lennox, whose perfect first date turns into a perfect nightmare when she discovers a dead body. And instead of finding romance, she's pulled into a murder investigation where hometown secrets run deeper than the alpine lake where it all started. If this is your first time here, please start with Episode 1, Chapter 1. There's a link to it in the show notes. For everyone else, we'll continue with Chapter 7. But first, an update. I had a magical moment last night, that tingly feeling when all the pieces of the puzzle suddenly click into place, and I just have to tell you all about it. Picture this. I'm driving my son to a basketball game. It's late, it's dark outside, and we're passing by that house. You know the one. We all have a version of it in our neighborhoods. The house where we've never actually met the residents, but we've created an entire story about them in our heads. In our case, it's the sports TV house. Every single time we drive past at night, their TV is on, and it is always sports, mostly football. It's become such a fixture in our family routine that we actually look forward to driving past. What sport is it tonight has become our version of I Spy. It's our own little real-life mystery. And then last night, bam, a lightning bolt moment. I told my son, this has to go in my next book. I could see it so clearly. Georgia walking past her grumpy neighbor's house night after night. The TV is always on, always a cooking show through the open slats. It becomes a part of her routine, comforting and predictable. Until one night, no cooking show. The TV is off. Is the neighbor finally out of town? Did they get sick of watching food they'd never be able to eat? Or is something more sinister at play? Of course, Georgia has to investigate. Would she even be Georgia if she didn't? Taking these quirky, wonderful little details from real life is my absolute favorite part of writing cozy mysteries. I just love asking, but what if? What if that harmless little quirk somehow became the thread that unraveled into a murder? On another note, this week has been huge for other updates as well. Many of you have been covering the book cover saga, and I've been talking a lot about endings. I'm going to cover both of those more in the newsletter this week. I just really wanted to tell you about this little exciting breakthrough that I had. But now I'm curious, what is your family's quirky observation about the people around you? Jump on the newsletter and email me. I love hearing about real-life mysteries. And who knows, maybe your story will inspire something in my next book. Last time, what started for Georgia as concern for Jake quickly spiraled into something much more complicated. A missing hat that should have been at the crime scene, secret meetings and unexplained lies, a business deal that cut a widow and her teenage son. The more Georgia uncovered, the less sense it made. And the more convinced Georgia became that someone else was at the lake that morning, someone who knew exactly what they were looking for when they slipped into that dark office. Death at Dogwood Lake, Chapter 7. Georgia stood by the same broken, weeping tree she had before sneaking into the office. She waited for Jake, scanning the feet of people passing for signs of flip-flops. Everyone seemed to have the good sense to wear functional shoes. This was a garden center. Not that Georgia could judge anyone's shoe choice at the moment. Both her big toes smarted, re-inflamed from the compression of her sneakers, the bike ride, and the odd angle she'd been squatting in. There was a 95% chance that at least one of the blisters had popped and was oozing fluid. She already knew that when she finally got home and took her shoes off, her socks would be crusted with blood. During a momentary lull in foot traffic, Jake snuck out of the office and came to stand beside her. It would be impossible to say Georgia just had one question. With everything they'd gone through that morning, Georgia had a million she'd love answered. But there was something that just didn't make sense. How can the nursery be struggling when so many people are here? Georgia broke the silence. Since finding Tom's body, it seemed the only way she and Jake would speak at all was if she was the one to break the silence. Considering the circumstances and the fact that he'd been a willing conversation participant before their discovery, she would give him a pass. Eventually, he would need to do more of the heavy lifting, but for now he was barely keeping his head above water. Georgia could give him a little grace. I kept asking my dad. He can't explain it. It's like the money just vanishes. Like it vanishes, or like someone is stealing it? Yeah, probably that. Do you think it was him? Stealing from his own nursery? Jake shook his head like it was impossible. But he'd already admitting to suspecting his father of murder and being unfaithful, so it was interesting that that was where he drew the line. Either way, the money problems make him look more guilty. Will you send me the picture? Jake changed the subject. The one of the contract. You said I should delete it. That was when I thought it was safe, he said, finally, after searching for the word. Did you already trash it? Not yet. Georgia got out her phone, pulled up the picture of the contract, and handed it to Jake. He could be responsible for it. Send it, delete it, keep it. It didn't have anything to do with her. She just wanted to understand it better. That was weird, though, she said quietly, so the older gentleman a row over by the snapdragons didn't hear. The way that guy just came in and took it? Did you get a look at his face? Jake asked, still clicking on her phone. No. You? Just the flip-flops. That made sense. The gap between the desk and the floor only left a few inches of visibility. Hang on. Georgia smoothed her sundress while thinking. Why didn't you duck down when I came in? Jake had been standing in plain sight when Georgia had entered the office. He'd been in the dark, but still visible. I did. I recognized your shoes. He pointed at her dirty sneakers. She really should have changed before leaving the house. Shoes with mud caked on the soles, a wrinkled sundress that didn't match, and it was hard to ride in, and the blooming blisters. But she needed to leave before her mom could change her mind, and, if she was being completely honest, before her dad got to the nursery with his officer pals and shut the place down. Her dad. He hadn't even asked about the hat. Wait a minute. Did you tell the cops about the hat? No. Me either. But we should, right? Georgia said it like it was a question, though she knew the answer. They had to tell them. It was one thing to ride around playing detective, trying to help, in a way, but it turned into a very different thing when you kept evidence from an ongoing murder investigation. Where do you think it is? She couldn't help but ask. He could have stashed it anywhere. His office at the college? A random trash can? Jake rubbed the back of his neck with his hand. I guess I better go. With Dad and Tom both not working today, I should stay and help. Will your mom be okay with that? She'll be relieved. She hasn't even looked at me since your dad came. I'm so sorry, Jake. I think it's like she thinks I did it. No, of course she doesn't think that, Georgia said, gathering all the strength and courage that she'd been missing. She slipped her hand through his. She's just sad or scared. Probably both. She doesn't blame you. Jake's fingers tightened around her hand as he matched her pressure, then released, letting her go. Georgia folded her arms to cover how much it hurt, him not holding her hand, and the difference between their date this morning and now. Thanks. I guess I better get to work. He looked at her, those dark eyes full of longing. Like he didn't want to go, and he certainly didn't want her to leave. Where will you go? He was stalling and blowing a little hot and cold. Georgia had to remind herself that as much as she'd been through this morning, he'd been through more. I'm going to check out that other nursery. No. Jake said it loud enough to draw the attention of the elderly gentleman with the snapdragons, now another row over, looking at the rose bushes. Flip-Flops is clearly from the Pineville nursery, and we know your dad was probably there this morning. No, he said again, quieter. I don't think it's safe. What are you talking about? Look. He ran his fingers through his hair and looked over his shoulder before saying, When I started following my dad, I went there once. It's not... He paused. It's not a normal nursery. In what way? Georgia wasn't going to be babied, and she certainly wasn't going to be left behind. She needed resolution and closure on this too. Maybe not quite as much as Jake, but she could already feel the nightmares forming. She'd been there. Her family was involved too. Her best friend's dad had been arrested, taken in for questioning about a murder. And in a town as small as theirs, things like this just didn't go away. She would forever be the girl who had found the man her best friend's dad had killed, or the girl whose dad had arrested the wrong guy. The only way any of this came out okay was if Owen Meadows was innocent, and she could prove it. I don't want you going there. Jake gritted his teeth, his jaw flexed. Georgia glared back at him. If she weren't so mad, he'd be pretty attractive right now, but he wasn't her boyfriend and he wasn't her dad. In fact, other than basic respect because his family was also involved, she didn't owe him anything. We gotta go after that guy, said Georgia. There are only two types of people who would want to steal that contract. The people that want the deal to go through and the ones that don't. Flip-Flops knew when to come and where to find it. Just don't go there, Jake sighed, cutting her off. He turned and left without another word. Georgia didn't know a lot of things, as far as Tom Harding's death was concerned, but she knew where she was going next. Like an invisible string, she could feel the Pineville nursery tugging at her. With 2 signatures already in place, even with her limited knowledge of contracts, Georgia was pretty sure it would still be viable, whether Owen was in prison or not. Whoever had stolen that contract had waited until the coast was clear, until news of Tom's death had rushed through the valley, and until Owen Meadows had been arrested for it. The hat wasn't here. The nursery was inexplicably going under, and someone had stolen the contract. Someone knew what happened at the lake. Georgia had more questions now than she had when she'd first found poor Tom Harding. It seemed that either Jake's dad had more motive than ever, or he was being framed. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a mystery-loving friend, or consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast player. Most of all, thank you so much for being here today. I loved it, and I'm already excited for next week.